He took every blow for the alien young, and from that moment the Queen insisted he was her own. The human named Mark never planned to stand before an alien throne. He never imagined crossing galaxies, never imagined carrying the bruises of another species on his skin, never imagined being pulled into a destiny shaped by a choice he made in a moment of instinct. Yet the story began long before the Queen ever spoke to him. It began when Mark found himself on a barren stretch of land in a remote frontier, world where two civilizations had collided in a conflict. Neither side wished for, yet neither could. Escape. Mark served as a security officer stationed with a small trade delegation. His job was simple. He watched borders, guarded shipments, and ensured the peace held as both sides attempted to negotiate the end of a growing tension. The world had a sky tinted with violet streaks, mountains that glowed faintly in the dusk, and forests of silver leaves whispered when the wind shifted. It was a place both beautiful and dangerous, and it was home to the ruling species known among their own kind as the Yalari. The Yalari were tall, elegant, and carried an air of nobility even in moments of silence. Their queen ruled not by fear, but by a commanding presence shaped through centuries of tradition. Mark had seen only a few Yalari during his time on the world. They traveled with guards, who moved with swift discipline. The alien young, however, were almost never seen near outsiders. They were regarded as sacred. Their safety carried extreme importance. Any harm to them could spark immeasurable consequences. Even rumors of danger could bend the course of diplomacy in a darker direction. One morning, when the ground was still cool from the night, and the distant twin suns had barely risen, Mark walked a patrol near the border path between the human camp and the Yalari forest. He carried minimal gear and moved with the practiced rhythm of a soldier accustomed to long walks. He planned to complete his circuit in silence. His thoughts were on home, on Earth, on the warm deserts where he grew up, on the sense of solid familiarity that no alien star could mimic. That calm was broken by a sound he could not ignore. A cry echoed from the direction of the forest. It was not human. It was high, sharp, filled with fear. Mark froze, listening. He knew he should call for backup. Protocol demanded it. But the second cry sliced through hesitation. He sprinted toward the sound, branches snapping beneath his boots, heart pounding with an urgency he did not fully understand. The clearing he entered was small and surrounded by towering trunks. At its center huddled 3 young Yalari. Their skin shimmered in soft blue tones, their eyes wide with terror. Surrounding them was a group of feral creatures with slender bodies and bone-blade limbs. No one told Mark about these predators. He did not know their habits, their strength, or anything beyond the fact that they had cornered defenseless children. He moved before he thought. The creatures lunged. Mark rushed forward, planting himself between them and the young. The first blow knocked him to a knee. The second slashed across his arm. Pain flared bright, but he pushed himself upright and swung with all the force he had. His training took over. He blocked, struck, and shoved one creature away, while another raked claws across his ribs. He felt the warm sting of blood under his uniform, felt his lungs burn, yet he refused to fall. Every time a creature moved toward the young, he stepped in its path and absorbed the hit. The fight felt endless. His strength dimmed. His breath grew shallow. But something primal in him refused to yield. In that clearing, on an alien world under 2 rising suns, he protected lives he barely understood. At last, after one final blow that nearly sent him crashing to the ground, the creatures fled. They scattered back into the forest, leaving Mark swaying on his feet, blood dripping from 6 wounds, vision narrowing. He turned to the young, forcing a tired smile. They stared at him with awe and confusion. One of them reached out, touching his uninjured hand with trembling fingers. Mark nodded, signaling they were safe. Minutes passed before a patrol of Yalari guards arrived. Their reaction was immediate. They surrounded the young, checked them for harm, then turned their attention to Mark, who collapsed before he could finish explaining. He awoke in a soft chamber, unfamiliar yet comforting. The air smelled faintly of crystal blossoms. Light filtered through translucent walls. Mark lay on a surface that molded gently to his body. He tried to sit up, but pain held him down. A healer entered, her movements graceful, her expression calm. She told him in firm words to rest. She explained that the young were unharmed. They had been returned to the royal sanctuary. News of his actions had reached the highest levels. And above all, the queen herself had summoned him. Mark barely had time to process the meaning of those words when guards escorted him through winding corridors carved from shimmering stone. They reached a hall so vast it seemed to breathe with its own quiet pulse. The queen stood upon a raised platform, tall and adorned with silver markings that signified her lineage. Her presence filled the room, commanding attention without force. When Mark approached, the queen studied him with eyes like polished obsidian. He felt small under that gaze, yet not threatened. Instead, he felt as though she was reading the entirety of his soul. She asked him to recount what happened in the clearing. He spoke simply. He did not embellish. He did not boast. He told her he heard cries, found the young surrounded, and acted because no one else was there. Silence followed. Then the queen descended from the platform and stood before him. Her voice rang with a weight that resonated deeply through the hall. She declared that Mark had done more than protect the young. He had taken every blow meant for them. He had shown a courage rare even among her own species. And in their culture, one who risked everything for the young was bound to the royal lineage in a sacred way. Not as a servant, not as a subject. As family. Mark was stunned. He tried to protest. He insisted he acted on instinct. He did not seek reward. The queen shook her head gently and stated that his intentions did not matter. What he did carried meaning beyond his understanding. The young survived because he stepped forward. Such an action was never forgotten among the Yalari. She insisted that he would be under her protection and within her care from that day on. She declared him as one of her own. Life changed for Mark. He was moved into the inner palace. The architecture took his breath away. Walls glowed faintly with swirling colors. Gardens shimmered with crystalline petals that chimed softly when brushed by the wind. Streams of pale light flowed through channels carved like veins beneath the floors. Everywhere he walked, guards nodded with respect. Attendants greeted him with warmth. Yet the greatest shift came from the young he had saved. The three visited him often. Their names were Rhea, Nalo, and Fen. They followed him as he recovered. They wanted to hear him speak about his world. They asked about Earth, about oceans, deserts, and forests unlike their own. In return, they taught him about the palace, the culture, the stories of the Yalari ancestors. Mark found himself smiling more often. The place felt less foreign with them by his side, but his presence in the palace also stirred political waves. Not all were pleased. Some nobles questioned why an outsider held such a sacred connection to the queen. Others wondered if humanity would gain unfair influence. Mark sensed the tension whenever he walked through formal halls. He heard whispers behind his back, yet none dared confront him openly because the queen's decree was absolute. The queen herself visited Mark frequently. She spoke to him not as a ruler, but as someone who wished to understand the heart of the one who saved her young. She asked about his past, his challenges, his hopes. She shared stories of her world, the burdens of leadership, the fragile peace she sought to maintain. Over time, Mark realized something he never expected. She did not see him as a tool or symbol. She saw him as someone important to her personally, someone bound by honor and sacrifice. One evening, while the sky outside shimmered with drifting lights from the upper atmosphere, the Queen summoned him to a private terrace overlooking the gardens. She told him that the Council had raised concerns. Some believed humanity might use his position as leverage. Others claimed his presence disrupted tradition. The Queen looked at him with steady conviction and declared that she would not yield. She would not cast aside someone who acted with such pure courage. She told him he mattered, not just for the young he protected, but for the strength he showed in the face of danger. Mark listened, humbled. He assured her that he never sought influence. He only wished for peace between their peoples. The Queen smiled a rare expression that softened her regal bearing. She told him that peace was built not by treaties alone, but by individuals who chose compassion over conflict. She said he embodied that ideal. Months passed. Mark trained with palace guards to better defend himself. He joined diplomatic gatherings to represent human sincerity. He assisted in programs that improved communication between species. Yet through all of it, the bond with the Queen and her young remained the strongest thread in his new life. He watched Rhea learn advanced navigation skills. He saw Nolo develop talent in shaping crystalline structures. He cheered Asvin mastered the traditional dance of their ancestors. They insisted Heston beside them in ceremonies. They clung to his hands when nervous. They sought him whenever fear surfaced.